the interview questions, though. These are the interview questions that I cooked up. They were not Googled. Feel free to give me your feedback on them. I'm not saying they're perfect. Interviewing is something that I want to get better at. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a situation where the person sitting across from me, where I can tap into their brain. So what I want to see is when I ask somebody an interview question, like their eyes move and like they're going into their brain, right? And they pause, right? And then because what I found is with these interview questions, I feel like I've gotten very genuine answers from people, and that they kind of like spark conversation with them. And I can, and part of it is the people that I've, interviewed or whatever, it's personality based, but I feel like these questions help me get into a thinking spot with them. They're not perfect. I'm workshopping them. So let's see what you think. The first one was, I asked them, what fills up your cup? I'm a big believer in when it comes to your job, when it comes to your relationships, in order to have something to give, you have to have something in your cup, right? If I'm going to help fill your cup, I have to have something in mine. People have good days and bad days. Some days we come in, the cup is empty, and we need somebody else to fill us up, right? But more often than not, we want to be able to come into a relationship, come into the workplace with something to offer. It's a big goal of mine as somebody in a management position. I want to be consistent, and I want to always have something to offer the people that I work with. Okay. So I wanted to start the conversation kind of around that idea and say, what fills up your cup? That got smiles and thoughts from people and some pretty good reaction. And it also lets me know, like, I was listening to some stuff on the topic, and it was like, so if you can kind of get people to tap into like their genuine self, not like their work self, right? To get talking about what they're passionate about. And so you might see that as a theme a little bit through the questions here. Second question I asked was, tell me about a hobby or pastime outside of beer that you are passionate about. Again, another question that's aimed at tapping into what they're passionate about, what they're excited about. So you can see if it like rings true and like the way they're talking to you, right? You can see how like naturally they like express their excitement for the things that are theirs, right? And it's a little bit of like a personal share too. And so it's a chance to like form a connection. Now, when I do these things, sometimes I will give like a little bit of like conversational feedback once they're done. And I usually try to, especially when it connects with something that is applicable to me. So because I find that as like rapport building as you're walking through that process, because I want them to be comfortable to express themselves clearly to me, right? Because the job interview is me seeing if you're a good fit for working where I work, and for you, if you want to join what we're bringing to the table, right? So it's a two-way interview. The next question I asked was, how would an attentive manager evaluate you as an employee? It's not a current manager. It's not a past manager. It's not a good manager. It's not a bad manager. It's an attentive manager. And it's a manager that sees you and notices you. The follow-up is, what would they say is the next step in your development? You're not trying to draw out like, oh, what are you bad at? An attentive manager, because in my mind, when I think of an attentive manager, like it has like an encouraging feel to it, right? An attentive manager, what would they say is your next step, right? Because that's not a negative. It's just what's next for you to get better with, right? So it's almost like introducing that idea of a weakness or an area that you need growth. It almost introduces it through that developmental lens, right? At least that's what I'm trying to achieve. And I asked, what are the characteristics of your ideal coworker? Which is kind of HR regular, I think. I did ask the question, why have you chosen the beer industry as opposed to another passion-driven food production field like wine, artisanal bread, chef? What brewery tasks have elicited a stress response from you? And then the follow-up question is, how did you cope with that? It's not a question to try to say, oh, what are you bad at process wise in the brewery? Because it could be anything, right? But it's like, what are the situations that make you feel stress at work? And I've gotten some really good answers out of that. Like, people give you the feedback of, when the schedule's all over the place, right? Or when there's no schedule, from an organization standpoint, different things like that. So it's very informative for me to understand what helps to make you tick as an employee. And then the final one was, because really, I mean, everybody that applies is really already in the industry, or by and large. You're already employed in the industry. What has you interested in joining our team? And that's probably just a standard HR one. But that's the lineup that I was working with. And I tried very hard to facilitate a conversation where the question is asked, any clarification if need to, and the question is given. I let them talk until they run out. I try to be a very active listener, a lot of eye contact, responding non-verbally, right? And then encouraging response through positive feedback. And then when they wrap up, I did try to keep it small, but in those areas where I think there's something shared or something I can share that I think is like a direction that we want to build our culture at Sonder, you can kind of nurture that a little bit too. So that was my breakdown on employment stuff. I would be interested in your feedback on it. I know it's a little off the beaten path for what we talk about here, but we do the career stuff. We do the leadership stuff as well. So